Good afternoon, friends. Thank you all for joining us today. As you all know, one of the missions of Flow is to reach out to the women who are less fortunate and help them stand on their own 2 feet, despite the challenges presented to them. To that end, last week we had launched a project to create livelihoods for women across the country in association with Hey Didi, who will train these women to be financially independent and find jobs. For rupees 10,000 only, one can empower someone to get a job while so many are losing jobs. Friends, I'd like to take a few moments to thank those who have contributed to this noble cause. Sushila Golcha, Tu Saraugi, and Sandhya Jalan. Our gratitude for being part of this initiative. I request you, the Flow fraternity, to be part of this drive by making a contribution of 5 or 10,000. And in case you need any further information, please reach out to any of us. Now, without much further ado, it is with great joy we welcome you to meet India's Renaissance man, Shri Rajeev Sethi. The Renaissance considered man the center of the universe, limitless in his capacity for development, and led to the belief that men should try to embrace all knowledge and develop their own capacities as fully as possible. This ideal is most brilliantly exemplified in Sri Rajeev Sethi, South Asia's leading design professional and thinker. He is known internationally for his innovative contributions to preserving and celebrating India's rich cultural heritage. He is an accomplished scholar, curator, thinker, and an encyclopedia of cultural insights. His gifts are manifested in the fields of design and architecture, performances and festivals, exhibitions and publications, policy and program. He's also found ways to bring relevance to the traditional skills of the vulnerable artisan communities. It is therefore not surprising that the Princeton architect William Lariche has summed up Mr. Sethi has accomplished so much in so many fields that gods no doubt will excuse him in his next reincarnation from doing nothing at all. Rajiv ji, we are indeed privileged to have you here with us this afternoon and cannot wait to hear more about your journey and your works. In conversation with Rajiv ji is our past chair and my dear friend Leena Kejriwal. She is a renowned photographer and installation artist based in Mumbai. Leena is also the founder of the Missing Link Trust. With single minded focus since 2015, she's been working to create meaningful methods and programs for the prevention of human trafficking. Leena has received multiple awards and accolades for her unique artistic take on this grave social issue. She is also the brand ambassador for Fuji India and an author of multiple photography books. Her seminal work, Calcutta Repossessing the City, has been on the best selling list. Hi, Leena.
Thank you, Samira, for having me here for this meaningful conversation with one of the heroes of my life, Rajiv Ji. And yes, you are. And thank you for the sweet introduction. Um, so, Rajiv, I'm going to have a really, I'm looking forward to the conversation today. And before that, I want to give everybody a little introduction to who you are because nobody knows how great you are. Only I think I'm privy to it. Not many people know. So I'm going to give them a little insight into some things about you before I start letting you speak. So the legendary pioneer Kupul Jayakar concluded a citation to an award being given to Rajeev Sethi and wrote, "What a master conductor is to an orchestra, Rajiv is to design. His work has transformed the design vocabulary of India." Friends, I'm deeply honored to present to you Padma Bhushan Shri Rajeev Sethi ji. I knew Rajiv way before he stepped into my first exhibition at the India Habitat Center in 2001. I had invited him for my show and I was not sure if he'd be able to come. But I still remember when I saw him walk across the courtyard and coming into my exhibition space, it was one beautiful moment of my life which I'll never forget. And of course, I was blessed that he liked what he saw of my work. He liked it so much that he immediately onboarded me for his ongoing project in Mumbai. He's also the one who I was blessed to have who launched my book on Calcutta. And I still remember his reaction when he saw my book. He called me Nain Sukh. It was the ultimate compliment I could have received for the work. There has been so much to learn by just being in his presence.
Leela, Nainsook was not just about your eyes. He's one of the greatest painters of medieval
I
India.
know. I know, Rajiv, and I know you meant that I seem to have some sort of a. I've been able to grasp some beauty in the ordinary, just like how Nansuk had. I totally understood.
Notwithstanding your beautiful eyes.
I didn't even mean that, Rajiv. I didn't
No,
even mean.
I want you to know.
Thank you. So, but that was the ultimate compliment. I'll never forget it. And there's so much to learn by just being in your presence. He's a storehouse of knowledge and so acutely aware and sensitive to his surroundings that for me, every moment with him has been a moment of at least passive learning. He's one of my stars who has shaped my life. So, friends, how many of you know about this amazing person who's going to talk to us soon? I'm sure most of you have had a brush of his creative genius, and yet y'all are totally unaware that he's the person behind it. Let me give you a hint. How many of you have walked into the Mumbai International Airport and was struck by all the beautiful art and the installations there and wondered who was behind it? Yes, it's Rajiv here. So today, I would like us to know more about him, his work, but first I'm going to take a small sneak peek into Rajiv's formative years that have shaped his values before he got to know more about the multitude, before we get to know more about the multitude of projects that he has conceptualized and created. So Rajiv was born in a family where giving and sharing was a norm. Born to parents of deep persuasion, Rajiv's father, late Kishori Lal Sethi, was a freedom fighter, and his mother, Krishna Malhotra, was India's first women attorney to be accredited by the Supreme Court. Here we see them with Mahatma Gandhi, who stayed at their home in Kashmir where Rajiv was conceived. Studying at Delhi's modern high school with Kaval and Devyani Krishnan teaching him painting, he stood first at the All India board but chose not to go to New York on a scholarship for art. Instead, he joined St. Stephen's College to do history honors. Narendra Sharmaji taught him dance, and Shri Khastigar the little music he knows. Today, Rajiv will be exploring his amazing journey from the 1970s onwards, but my introduction will prepare the ground for the decade before. So, why don't we all imagine India in the 1960s? Salman Rushdie's Midnight Children, born to an independent country, now a youthful generation trying to reimagine creativity for a young nation with an ancient past. India, old and new, not here, not there, struggling to straddle huge disparities between the rich and the poor, rural and urban, desi, global. Where did we go from there? For the privileged, creativity in the aftermath of a colonial education meant finding metaphors anchored in the Indian ethos. Doors had opened to a seductive westernization yoked to some sort of universal modernization. This hybrid construct challenged people who lead India with their tentative vision. Meet Rajeev Sethi, then in his teens, working with people like Kamala Devi Chattopadhyay and Pupul Jayakar, in close touch with Gira Sarabhai and Ela Dutt, working on art installations with the like of M.F. Hussain and inspired by Ray Charles Eames. His theatrical and outgoing personality always made him a star, winning award year after year across creative genres. Painting, creative events, acting, singing, dancing. The incredible Joanne Littlewood and Habib Tanvir came into his life when Rajiv was doing street theatre in Delhi. Wearing clothes made with Indian textiles, painting and designing architecture for India's first discotheques, studying graphics with Stanley William Hayter in Paris, then working as the first Indian in an international house of fashion with Pierre Cardin, setting up Cardin's transdisciplinary laboratory, becoming a part of the Beaumont, and rubbing shoulders with who's who of the art world from New York to Milan. Learning to survive the West, he returns home, craving to work for the real India. He sets up IDLI, an abbreviation of more mouthful interdisciplinary laboratory of ideas with a group of like-minded friends and sets out in the early 70s to do landmark exhibitions and programs touching the raw chord of Renaissance, yet remaining unassuming. So Rajiv's many citations and awards include the 1985 Padma Bhushan, the 2000 the Order of Merit by the Federal Republic of Germany, in 2017 Government of France Chevalier de l'Ordre des Arts des Lettres. I hope I said that right. In 2010, he got in tax first Indira Gandhi Lifetime Achievement Award. In 2013, the Architectural Digest and the Mercedes-Benz Award of Excellence. Today, Rajeev Sethi is South Asia's leading design professional and thinker. My friends, ladies, I'm over to Rajeev now to share with us the passion which drives him in everything what he does.
Thank you. Thank you, Leena. Thank you, my dear Leena, and thank you to all the wonderful ladies who invited me to this. I was particularly moved with your mission to help those in distress. Moment. Formidable ladies, very tenacious, with great capacity to take care not of themselves, but their whole family, and indeed the whole community. But at the moment, self-employed, self-organized, could do with a lot of help, and that you have come up to raise this consciousness amongst your members is truly creditable, and I congratulate you. Much of what I wanted to share with you is about the works of these people, especially women, all over the country, who have been doing amazing things to keep us as the guardians of our soul. Everybody is lauding at the moment the guardians of our physical self, whether they be doctors and the security personnel, the sanitary staff, all extremely important. People, the artists, the artisans, so many of them are women who keep the family together. I congratulate you to put them at the base of our concern. So whatever comes out of this event, if there are people contributing to the idea of empowering them, I would feel hugely privileged to be a part of that exercise. Now, you know, my dear, the issue of following one's passion, Leena, it's really not about following. It's about creating the passion. It's about becoming the passion. To make something out of nothing, one must jump into the deep end, constantly try new things all the time, even become a jack of all trades, because everything connects, and that is something I will take on. It's my hashtag of my life, and I will sum up my discussion today on the idea of what Ray and Charles Eames used to say about everything connects. The only goal I've had in whatever I do, the way I see it is somehow correct. Of course, there are grids I apply, whether it makes people jobless, ruthless, makes them ruthless, futureless, voiceless. Then it's. But at the moment, I just want to tell you, does it feel right? Is it right for the moment? Is it right for my friends or my camaraderie? Is it right for my country? Is it right for ecology? Now, the emotional retina is I think, a very good, safe kickstart. Creativity of is really what gets the heart moving. Now, yes, the intellect follows, but it can't see the agenda as I see it, because that's all madness. And madness and more madness, I think, is the only constant I am wholly dedicated to. Uh, so, Leena, I never thought about doing a retrospective. Secretly, I believe it's still a long time before I can sign off, although I
Yes,
claim
very long.
it's
Very long. Yeah, Rajeev, you're too young just now to even think about that.
at 71. You can keep saying that to me every day. But anyway, it's after many, many failures, many more failures than the successes that you know. I'm not sure about anything. As they say, basti basna khel nahi hai, basti hai. So this idea of liminality, this charming space of not here, not there, this kind of twilight zone that I inhabit. It's forever twilight. Living life as if it's my last day, like my last mango or my last season
Wow.
or my last webinar. Who knows? It's very difficult for me to accept the tenor of this hold all retrospective, because 50 years is too long. So I don't know
Actually,
why.
Rajeev, this is not a retrospective, it's an introduction.
Well, that's what it will be. That set the narrative for each decade. Nice way to look
Sure.
at my life again. Decade. I've never done this before. I'm doing it for the first time for
Great.
FICCI and the formidable ladies of Flo.
Great.
Uh, I I I think I've picked up 30 odd projects and programs that I will skim through today, but they're like an onion. If you feel like layering them, they go on and on and on, and they only start revealing themselves as this layering unfolds. But however, we only have a limited time. So the 1960s, my dear, you've described, I could call it a decade of disruption, of irreverence. We took pride in rejecting rejections, and that was part of growing up.
Yeah.
The
It's also the
70s,
rebel years.
sorry,
They were the rebel years, right? Across the world, they were the rebel years.
they were the rebellions. But I think they need a more coherent, a, a cultural catharsis that makes it go beyond just students. That's
Yeah.
another subject for another day.
Yeah.
80s and 90s, sorry, the 70s meant creating responsibilities. And 80s and 90s was all about consolidation.
Mm.
And obviously, with consolidation, more disruption. Um, and finally, the first decade of the new millennium was marked with accountability, a strong sense, Leena, of wanting to give back, which continues for the last 10 years. And it's all about transmission and pedagogy. It's leaving something behind that might help the young
Yeah.
to carve their own space for their own passion. So
No.
that is so far as what your word passion takes me into. Now, let me share with you. So we set up a thing called IDLI. It's actually known to be Interdisciplinary Laboratory of Ideas. That was a mouthful. So we just called ourselves IDLI. And Italy is how we all got known. It was in my mother's flat in Shankar Market that we would meet 24/7. And there were these mad things. I mean, there was the Bangladesh war was on. We would do street theater. I would dress up as a bandaged person, and they would actually pick me up and put me in a car and throw me on the steps of the U.S. Embassy. You can't even get near that place now. And in those bandaged, bleeding corpse of like a mummy, I would attract attention to say, look what's happening. There was the apple in the sky. When Joan saw us do all these things for Bangladesh, she said, stop all these grandmother's attempts. You should go back home. You should be really looking at what's happening to the satellite that's going to start intruding into your homes with messages that have been prepared by people all over the world. So the new technology is really all about the future, the age. So we set up Italy, thinking we would look at the orientation of the site experiment, and I will show you a little bit about that later. But one of the things that put us together is this incredible pavilion at the Asia 72. Long before its time, we did this pavilion called Ek Yatra. You remember family planning? It was about hum do, hamare do. And we said, and there was this wonderful red triangle. That was a great symbol. But it also had a very unpleasant part that came in a little later with the emergency. But however, what was interesting was that we wanted to make this slogan and this very strong idea of a population, and the best pill of population being development. We do a very popular pavilion, and where we would take people from outer space. So they came in a spacecraft. I still remember Mrs. Indira Gandhi's face, because she couldn't quite believe when she stepped onto the mobile ramp, and she didn't know whether she was steady. But we took her into a spaceship that came down, but technically walked to a forest, and then we went into an area for to see marine life, and then human family, and we met a family and a girl, and then we went further to see how they moved into a city in the concrete jungle, parts of it which you see on the pictures that are put up, and then you're always, and then this girl who got married and was we showed her courtship. It's all very interesting and popular, and then after marriage, she's expecting at the same time as her mother-in-law. So there were very subtle ways of telling that, there is, at some point, we have to know when to stop. So that was family planning, but it was very interdisciplinary. It was multimedia long before the word came into the way we understand it today. So that was Ek Yatra. Then there was, I sort of was picked up by this and UN conference. The exhibition went to Denmark and to Sweden, and it succeeded in telling people who had come there with just the idea of talking their expert views to hear what a village thinks about development, and what it thinks about population, and what it thinks about issues that were alarming the world in terms of the doomsday prophecies. This is too complicated. Again, as I said, it's like an onion. I can't bear it out. From there, I came back, and I was not interested in traveling. A rural product, a project for integrative development in a village, starting to look at crafts as rural consumers would use them. It was not about these urban emporiums. It was about a farmer's footwear, or it was about creating a proper refrigerator in pottery, or about roof tiles, about things that rural consumers could use, and their markets were being eaten into by industry. You got Hindustan Lever jumping into the villages selling hair dyes, or snacks and foods were coming into places in a village heart where they could do things which only they could do. So there was a great devaluation of rural skills, and that was to counter that. It was called Dehati Kala Kendra. I worked 3 years in that village in Rohtak, and in the surrounding areas in Haryana. Then I was taken up because it was part of this experiment. We were very concerned about the way housing was being imposed by people up in capitals. So I created an exhibition for Vancouver for Habitat, which was with me sitting on a bicycle. And I made these 6 screens that could tell what the villagers felt about settlement and about habitat. So there was a huge issue related to architecture for the poor. And one of my fondest memory was this, that a man like Hassan Fatih, who was like my sort of, I was like an Abhimanyu, I used to read his book, but he suddenly turned up. And then, of course, subsequently came to India to work with us too. And Buckminster Fuller, who I'd known earlier before I went. And for the first time, I had this great pleasure of getting the both to meet. I still remember in my little ramshackle place, they met and chatted about what the future will be in terms of technology, in terms of rural understanding and sensibilities, and what sciences can give us and what it can take away. So then came another thing where this same exhibition went to Sweden as well. And in Sweden, I started to develop an alternative mediation. At that time, you remember, I started off as a painter. So I used to do a lot of drawings. And I said that all these flyovers, these microwave linkages from city to city, every city was getting hooked to television. But what about the man at the bottom who didn't know, he didn't have that same television. Of course, television happened everywhere. I was very concerned that post my experiment with the Apple, which is this satellite instructional television experiment, which was in the 70s, we created this alternative of communication. And my premise was that look at this man in the village. Communication presupposes a physical condition. Now, a television set at that time used to cost about 2,000 rupees. So I said, but that's the amount of money we have to spend in making a well, an irrigation well. So is water more important or is the television more important? Today, of course, I feel television is extremely important. But at that time, there was a different seeing. At the same time, I was working with itinerants in Delhi. It was called Bhule Bisre Kalakar Sehkari Samiti. But it was set up by the people. I was just lucky that I could help being a mediator which could make things happen wherever.
Rajeev, I can see that for this, there was a whole time when you actually moved towards really empowering or talking, giving voice to the voiceless or the rural community. That's been some of your formative projects, even once you've come back. So far, everything has been driven by really giving voice or reaching them or talking about them, talking about the rural, the villagers and how to reach them.
Leena, even if I had 9 lives, I would not be able to return what Village India or what the poor have given me. This idea of poor is not a good title. They're tenacious, extremely skilled, and they can show us a lot more than what we can ever give them back.
I agree.
So that we are privileged in this country to be in a position to be able to serve. So I set up the first Bhule Bisre Kalakar Sehkari Samiti at Shadipur Depot, but that's one of my biggest failures. It was the most steepest learning curve. Requirements, we went up to everybody in the government, anybody who's anybody at that period, and I showed you some photographs earlier of some of the finest minds in the world, the country, that helped me reach out to the government that be, but nothing happened. And as a result, towards the 3 years ago, they were all bulldozed. The community that we wanted to set up as a village that could look after many things, including be a tourist attraction for the country, where people coming to their homes even would be welcome, because for them it's their way of life to perform and to share. But nothing happened. They're all living in a transit camp in the hands of a real estate tycoon who bought the land at a pittance for nothing. 5.5 hectares for as little as 6 crores 10 lakhs, promising to give them homes at the end of it. That was 5 years ago. It's still not happened. And that is what I've been writing about that. This is an editorial in the Times of India about this. But there are many, many issues where we ignore the real protagonist, forgetting that the art will survive only as long as the artist does. If there is no artist, there is no art. So we must reach out to them, not just for what they can give us and how they can enrich our life and how beautiful they can make our homes, but what they are as people, because they are the guardians of this country's identity. And we need to preserve that, conserve that, but actually reaching out to them and helping them as people. So then, of course, there was, in the 70s, when I came back from Paris, I designed the first emporium at the Baba Khadak Singh Marg, which was Kashmir Government Emporium, for which I designed many, many objects working in the land where I was conceived, which you pointed out. My Kashmir is my heart and my soul, and I keep going back to it. Unfortunately, not lately, but this is where it's all, where many of my steepest learning curves came. And I did a lot of work in revival. Again, one of those failures where bureaucracy takes over and all the items that I made before reaching the market get locked up in some trunk and probably lying in some godown of the government. Then came the festivals of India. Now I'm going to 80s. Now 80s really made us famous, because the festivals of India were a brainchild of Mrs. Indira Gandhi and Pupul Jayakar. But Pupul Jayakar gave it form, and she had an uncanny knack of what the world needs to hear about India. And so there's some of us, there was Martand Singh, there was me, and there were several others who some key presentations that could go out to major museums outside to show how India thinks of itself. We had enough of Western scholars and people telling us about this exotic country and layering out its chronology and its entire curatorial thing was different. So the first exhibition was at the London Barbican Centre, which is called Aditi, and then it went to America to the Smithsonian, where the entire festival became Aditi Festival of India, with many seminars, symposium, and a big mela. Now the Aditi was a great, it's at the Museum of Natural History. We had 100 people traveling with it, and every day in the morning we would get up and pray and put ourselves together, because for 12 hours later we had to put ourselves on show, where the boundaries between performing arts and crafts were sort of broken. Here is an Ardhanareshwar on one side in a bronze Swami Malai, and on the other side is a Berupia from Bengal showing you this roop in a different way. There's Ganga Devi painting the whole nuptial chamber, Jivya Soma, the great Jivya Soma, painting one in the whole museum became a procession where you could participate in an Indian marriage. It was all recreated. It wasn't done traditionally. It wasn't done with photographs. All paper. Again, reinvented. It's traditional art being made into a whole new display mechanism that never existed. So don't say traditions are static. Traditions evolve. They're dynamic.
And we played a very important part.
And these sculptures were never made before. All they did was make grain jars. But I said, why not tell your story? Why do I have to have photographs and films? Let's do it in a way that you can make paintings, you can make sculptures. And likewise, the pregnancy festival, I took the Tanjore glass painters and got them to paint the whole Varakappa ceremony, where the woman becomes pregnant, and where how wish fulfillment comes in, and long before we knew about baby showers and what have you. But to tell about the festival in a demonstration that was never the same on the first day of the exhibition and the last day. It kept evolving. So people kept coming back just to see the craft, but also to see the story unfold. So it was a live exhibition. So 100 people were traveling with it. That has never happened in a museum before. That was the first time. Many people were concerned. They even raised fingers, saying, "You're putting people up on show. They are not animals." And I said, "Ask them. They're loving it. They're loving to demonstrate. They love the idea of going in a magic bird for 2 months, having a great time in America." So that's about birth, the concept of birth, then welcoming the child, and with songs, and even the singers are live. These are the Maliyas who went out for the first time to America. Then safeguarding the child. These huge Palyapan who made these enormous INR forms for safeguarding of the community. Then the first feeding, Annaprashan, and then the first walking, the first trotters, how you learn to walk, the pie jabs, the things that we give that evoke the concept of walking. So I've taken you really back, and we'll come back to where it all makes sense today too. Then there was going out to the Mela, which is really meeting the world, and then the cycle beginning again with fertility and with courtship and with marriage and with pregnancy, nuptial, etc., etc. But outside, you went out into the museum onto a big Mela, actually. And this Mela was the first Mela that was ever happened on the Smithsonian Mall, where we had to actually, on the same day, burn the Ravan. If you see in the back, there is the Washington State Capitol. Of course, the Park Authority never forgave me because they've never seen so much fire on what they consider to be the most sacred of their national property. Every blade of grass, every tree there is marked. And here we are, these crazy people from India coming and putting up a whole Ravan on the National Mall with 3 million visitors. So this, of course, it did very well. The New York Times did many reviews. There was a big catalog. Every journal was full of it. And I also could pitch in what is in my heart, the politics of why the exhibition. Because these 100 people who went accompanying it are the same people who are living in a slum. Those are my Bhule Bisre Kalakar that you saw. So I said, it's all right for the government of India to take them around, bandy them out as a repository of our culture, bring them back and dump them in a slum. So the political agenda was very clear in my mind that if we take them out, please remember when they come back, they must have homes for themselves. They must have the rights that every artist has to have. So then came another exhibition because I thought the whole world was looking at India in a very exotic way. Even when we showed all these skills, they said, "Oh yeah, that's all right for these very colorful people right in this strange land which has no development, and it's underdeveloped." Exactly. So I said, now look here. These skills are of relevance to anyone, anywhere in the world, and they are an inheritance for humankind, not just for India. So I mounted another exhibition the next year called the Golden Eye, which was, in a sense, before its time, because it was the National Museum of Design, and I invited some of the most eminent architects and designers to come and work international, to come and work with me in the villages in India. At the same time, I wanted to train a whole lot of young people to work with these designers in their studios so they could get an exposure on what international design and what international markets want from our skills.
The project was initiated during mid-1984 by one of India's best-known designers, Rajeev Sethi, who has been involved with the preservation and celebration of India's cultural heritage, especially its living arts, for many years.
For this, it was essential to try and change the image for Indian crafts completely. And we needed a major international tribute from people whose name itself would evoke a response. And people here would wake up to say, what is this? Who are these people that these people have paid such a tribute to? I'm proud of our anonymous traditions, and I think that is probably where most of the art emerges, out of that anonymity. But I would love to see some of our great master craftsmen in the same bracket as the world's greatest designers. And the idea was to put the finest from the West with the finest in the East together as a dialogue. So that is the golden eye. But here it's so important because we're talking about people who don't understand that these things are made by hands. That they think everything comes from a machine. People in America think milk comes from a can or a water bottle. अब क्या बताएं इन लोगों को? यहाँ पर खाना भी मशीन से आता है, पहनने की चीजें भी मशीन से आती हैं, हर चीज मशीनी युग की है. तो ये जो हाथ की बनाई चीज है उसको उसकी सही पहचान इनको अब खत्म हो गई है. तो इस प्रदर्शनी में ये जरूर बताना था कि आज भी इस दुनिया में कितने हजार कारीगर हैं जो हाथ से इतना महीन काम कर सकते हैं और जिनका हुनर अब भी जीवित है. और ये हमारे देश का भविष्य है, भूत ही नहीं, भविष्य है. If you notice the entrance shrine on the day of Diwali, all the people who worked on this exhibition from all over the world have created a small shrine where they have put their handprints. And that was the shrine which crosses all religions, all iconography, and became the central focal point for the exhibition. But this is what we were very keen to express, that don't take this skill for granted. That if you take it for granted, it will go. But conservation for skills that are there depends upon renewed patronage with newer markets, newer ideas, new objects that will instill imagination amongst the creators of these objects and the users.
Assisting Sethi at the Golden Eye Studio in New Delhi was a team of 6 young Indian designers and project coordinator Maya Johar.
So Rajeev, would you see that there was a shift here, because till now you
No, Leena, don't forget, I started with Pierre Cardin. His first exposure in India was on Indian silks and what we could do even here. And then don't forget, much later I spoke about redevising traditional design with traditional skills for contemporary markets. So that journey began in 1970, to be exact. It's only now coming to shape because I had an international platform in which to say that India is more than just an exotic bird. It's a treasure house of skills that can address the imagination of anyone, anywhere. Of course, Mrs. Jackie Onassis was working on a book with me on that, and of course Zubin Mehta came and played a little concert at my exhibition, and it was a huge success. The New York Times did 2 reviews. Here are some of the things. Etole Satsas, we did drawings on napkin rings. This is a dining table made in Agra and Chenapatna. That was Kesariya Ram doing this amazing bench in his village. He made a satya on top, thinking that this will change his fortune. That's the village where he made it. This is the bench It is now in the museum. Now it's the Museum Modern Art. It's the only item of the Museum Modern Art then in the 18th. There was never, they didn't even have a painting of it.
Beautiful, right?
And so these people who break stones for the road are the ones who made that. Here is, for example, Teji Ben, who does embroideries for women, but she made this big embroidered tent, and Piraji Sagara painted on top of it too. And inside, this is Fry Otto, the great Fry Otto, one of the greatest architect engineers in the world, who came and spent a month with us in India. All these people came to India and worked with us. There was Zandra Rhodes and me working on another tent for another exhibition later. Then Fry Otto also did these beautiful cutlery, which is run by Gopilal Lohar in Udaipur. Amazing man who used to be making antique daggers. His child didn't want to make antique daggers. He said, what am I going to do with antiques where kings and queens can kill themselves? I'm more interested in what can I do it today? So we invented a whole lot of forks and knives with damascening, with a bit of gold. Now all this should be in the Indian market right now. These are huge luxury items made by great designers, but because I did this with the government, it's a dead end. And everything was put into a store 40 years ago, and everything went up in fire and nothing came out. That's another story. I won't go there.
But the skill set must be there, right, Rajeev?
Well, yes, we can be redone. But again, corporate captains, who am I speaking to? I'm speaking to the better halves. They should be the ones saying, this is India's future. This is not India's past. It's India's future. And this was done 35 years ago. Look at these tables that were done in by Fry Otto again with local Khans. But look at the Khurja pottery.
Right.
All
beautiful.
These are tables by Bernard Rudowski in inlay. Shoes made in such a way that they could be more earth shoes, more scientific than those pointed shoes that we wear now. Charles Moore, again a giant, he's dead. He created in the Biedemay style these wonderful desks and chairs and also toy boxes. Toy boxes based on Banaras toys. This is Jack Larson working with extra weft techniques on carpets, on curtains, on wallpapers and wall quilts and embroideries. This is part of my exhibition called The Golden Eye. Mary McFadden that discovered all the brocades which could be made into contemporary clothing. Hans Hollein, the great architect from Austria. Unfortunately, all of these are dead. I'm now the last in the queue. Milton Glaser, Ivan Shamayev, making toys. Today, the Prime Minister, I'm very happy, announced in his statement that India must look at toys, indigenous toys. Well, India was a treasure house of toys till China took over. And when China took over, our imagination went kaput. We stopped thinking. This we did 35 years ago. The toys that we made then could still be made by craftsmen all over, which are child safe, which have all the things that are required for the toy industry. This is Hugh Castle and me working on furniture. There was some more jewelry. I won't go into detail. But look at the response. This was half a page in the New York Times. An advertisement in New York Times of half a page at that time would cost a fortune. Again, New York Times, House and Garden, Vogue. These are long before these magazines became Indian. These were editorials, main editorials in magazines at that time. Now I'm taking you away from craft into performing arts. Peter Brook, about the same time, came to me to ask me whether I would help him with Mahabharata. So since performing arts has been part of my entire genetic growth, and I said, of course, and I worked with him for 3 years, and we did many things, and then came the Apna Utsav. Apna Utsav I was tired of the festivals of India. And I told the then Prime Minister that I said, look, we just can't keep doing festivals if nothing is happening in the country. And everything can't exist for what's happening abroad. So I refused to do any more after 1986. And I said, but you're happy to do anything in India. So they said, well, why don't we work out Utsav for India? That's when Apna Utsav came out. Brilliant idea of Rajiv Gandhi, very clearly thinking through as three ideas that he had to put across. One, that art and culture cannot be remaining in air-conditioned halls, but has to go out to high-density areas. So it has to go to rural fairs, become an utsav. Two, he felt that since culture, as I keep telling and describing, is about many things, from food to clothing to thinking to making to doing to being, then how can there be one mehkama looking after this called culture? So let me make a department which allows its transgression into every field that connotes culture. That was the zonal cultural centers. The third part, culture doesn't come listening to political boundaries. If you say Hadoti, then Madhya Pradesh is as important as Rajasthan, or Bundelkhand. UP is as important as Madhya Pradesh. So each state, you can't have culture divided by states' political boundaries.
They see the divide, right? Exactly.
So how do they connect? Because they've gone into the little silos of each state. हमारा department तो culture department में ये नहीं आता. So it was important to have one center like the zonal culture center, which allowed you to be a member of more than one zone. You could be a member of 3 zones, 4 zones. So the country was divided in 7 zones. Now this kind of practical common sense comes from somebody who has a view from the top. It's pure common sense. And I was very privileged to be able to articulate it. But our problem with government always is we do things too big, too quick, too soon, and we have no game plan. We don't have a roadmap. We do tamashas. We're all for tamashas. Raat khatam, baat khatam.
Right.
So that's what I really, of course, the Times of India then gave it an editorial saying it was the most momentous event. And of course, there were many things I can't go into, how all the monuments were enlivened. And then coming to another play in Paris, for my dear friend Aryan Mushkin, who is more than my friend, she's really truly one, my soulmate. She worked with me on this idea of transmission. It's called Mother, Daughter, Father, Son. It was a play that I traveled with 35 people, with children and their parents, to see how education translates for us in our country, for traditional mediums.
Did you script it?
Yes, it was improvised and I directed it and put it together. The script evolved from an improvisation and I directed the play. So this is Hidden River, another big play that I did in the Mukesh Mills in Bombay with the National Centre of Performing Arts, NCPA. It was a play with 300 people, like with Kelucharan Mahapatra, Amanur Chakyar, some of the greatest gurus participating, with contemporary artists like Vijay Mehta, Rahul Bose, Kittu Gidwani, all kinds of people together doing something which had never been done. I was searching for the woman in me. It was a search. It was a workshop, but it was very, very seminal, looking for the woman in me. If what FICCI cannot get me to do, Flo can easily get me to do with a single. Because I do believe that the future is going to be about women. It's not going to be. So I keep trying to sharpen the women in me so that I will become more, I'll be included in their sphere of activity. So this is another play called Sangram or Azadi in the Red Fort. That's Red Fort Wall, and that's Bahadur Shah's 150th year of Sangram or Azadi. And it's it was like 2,000 people. Unfortunately, nothing I do becomes so small. This is really big. And on the top of where the Prime Minister does his flag hoisting, all the Prime Minister, the President, or the whole cabinet saw the 150th year anniversary being celebrated by India's incredible talent. So now coming to interiors and architecture. This is in the Imperial Hotel. Friends of mine, Meera and Bunny Singh, very dear to me, who've been my friends for over 50 years, they asked me to do this restaurant called the Spice Route. And I could use Kerala and Thailand as an inspiration to create a new food which was based on the spice route. This also is about, this is in the, I think it was in the late 80s or 90s.
I think 90s, if I'm not mistaken.
Maybe. And then there was a house of friends in Bombay, which I did with many artists.
I loved it.
With this is Paramjeet and Arpita.
It was given to an artist,
yes,
right?
That's Sudarshan and me working on the fight. This Vivan and Bhupin and Nalini. Then there was me working with bell metal casters. It was a house that was built for Rajesh Shah and Suketu Shah and their wives, Bansari Shah and Zai Shah. Also with earlier Nirja Shah was part of that. But I wanted to do a book, but well,
Yes.
so this is Manjeet Bawa painting, many. So for the price of less than even one painting, I got him to do 22 paintings for the whole room, because artists are mad too. They like to get
Yes.
excited by the idea of doing something which is
New and
different. So I said, we're going to do architecture. We're not doing canvas paintings that we're going to buy from a gallery. This was a whole 64 arts in a girl's room. There was a dining room. There was inlays on the ground. Some amount of
I love the library, the Paresh Rawal, the lovely handmade paper
Yes,
library.
Rawal,
green colour.
Yogesh Rawal, not Paresh.
Rawal, yes.
Yogesh Rawal. A dear,
Yogesh, okay.
one of the most sensitive artists of this century. Very
Love
sensitive.
them.
So basic needs now come to this new millennium. I was asked by the German government to do one of the 6 pavilions for their Expo 2000.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
this
you're back, Rajeev.
I'm not going into detail, because if you wanted me to go to these, this is about excess. It's about what we really ought to be, what we ought to be feeling now, when we're talking about
So what
slow
exhibition
food.
was the-
This is a huge exhibition. It was 75,000 square foot. It was the largest exhibition. It got the best exhibition thing at the Expo 2000 in Germany. My client was the German government. It was not about India. It was about the world. I had to travel to 52 countries. It was the first totally international project done by a totally Indian team.
So
And the-
Rajeev, my question would be is, I'm an artist, I love larger than life, and I would be excited to do something like this, but most of the time we don't even know this exists or this is happening. Do you propose it? Are you the one who initiates the conversations, or is it something which comes to you?
मैं इसके बारे में फिर बात करना चाह रहा हूँ, because it very relates to the pandemic.
I understand.
We're now about slow food, slow fashion, slow life, understanding not to be sustainable. We do not realize what we've done to this planet.
Work.
And
Planet,
we
yes.
must realize that there is a limit. So what we were trying to put out here in this pavilion was what is basic to survival. My pavilion's name was Basic Needs. So I began this journey by taking into a kingdom of excess, into a departmental store in the West, and telling you how new pricing systems based on carbon footprints will soon start have to changing the way you consume, on the concept of
This is so important.
conscious consumerism. This was 20 years ago.
Conscious consumption,
It
exactly.
was 20 years ago. We talked about air, there were many things, talked about water. I went to Australia, where I worked with the Australian Aborigines, with the Andes, with the women in Peru, in Lake Titicaca, working on display with them. This is in Mexico. Then the whole thing is it's like a theater. So this is Bread and Puppet Theatre working with me on the last section of my exhibition, which is actually a little film. Just see the puppet come down.
Beautiful. These tents are so amazing. So where were they made, Rajiv? Like where were they hand painted?
This whole Registan Square was all made in India. Great. In Indore, I got all the artists from the Fine Art College working with me. There was Jittu and there was Bhupi, and they continue to be a part of my life. Everything I do has a base in Indore. They continue to be a part. Lochan, Yorika Lochan, who worked with me on the calligraphy. So I didn't want to make a Disney-esque version of the Gate of Nara, so in the Silk Route. So I did calligraphy and recreated the whole door.
So Rajiv, how do you get inspired by this? Like how did you stumble when you saw calligraphy, when you knew you had to do a gate? Just a little thought process of how does it conceptualize into something of this?
If you're looking at that gate, I went to Nara, and the tangible monument is so impressive. What struck me more was when the deer came up and wanted to eat from my hand. What struck me more was when I saw a monk meditate with calligraphy. And that, to me, the intangible part, what we call sukshma. There is a tangible and the intangible. The tangible was a great monument, architecture. If I wanted to replicate it in miniature, it would end up looking like Disneyland. If I want to do something else, go a step further, then I have to weave into this narrative the emotion that I experienced when I was in that physical environment. So the calligraphy stayed with me. So I looked around in India for who could do Japanese calligraphy. Our director of the museum, his wife is a Japanese. So I asked her to give me key words, write them in which connote the idea of confluence. And I converted that calligraphy into architecture. And deconstructed it in such a way that it wasn't like a monolith, but in various layers on paintings that could be rolled and hung up on a frame. Then came Barcelona. They asked me to be the principal scenographer. So I created these huge, massive skylights which moved in the wind, and also created a Tree of Life microcredit courtyard explaining about how microcredit can help solve the problems of the poor. People like Angelina Jolie came and tied things to it too. There were many things that happened in the West. Then I was also director of the Earth Center. I'm coming straight to your Hayat. So here's another example of deconstruction. We look at this, I wanted Elephanta to be the main theme for a hospitality group for its interior design, for its artwork program. Interior design is always not in the hands of Indians, unfortunately. It's always somebody in the West. That'll change too. But however, I wanted to re-examine the idea of Elephanta. Again, I'm reverting back to my hidden river where I was looking for the woman in me, the Ardhanarishwar. So the whole idea of looking at the Elephanta cave from another eye, I took all my artist friends, whether they be people like Colte or Bose or the younger kids, they were all young by then, to on a boat ride to Elephanta. And we said, we are now going to find another way to pay a tribute to this absolutely superb monument of the 5th, 6th century, so close to Bombay. We also went to Mandapeshwar. We went to Yogeshwar, where there are these great caves in the middle of Bombay, in the middle of a slum. But again, looking at the Shiva mythology, but in a way that needed a contemporary bridge. So this was my signature artwork. How do I deconstruct the Sadashiv? The Sadashiv, one of the greatest sculptures known to humankind, not just India, to humankind. Leena, your photograph was so instrumental to explain this. It's there. So this sculpture is there. And when you look at it, I said, well, this is like a puzzle. It's like a becoming. So one side, I divided the sculpture into 5 in the whole lobby space. Architecture sometimes dictates the site-specific creativity that you must use. So on one side is Uma, on the other side is Bhairo. Bhairo stays into the eye of a serpent. Uma is looking into a lotus. And somewhere as it comes together in this is Sadashiv. So when it comes together, the puzzle becomes whole, which you see in the center. But when it's coming together, it's all a different part. So this is another one with Sudarshan Shetty doing the bull, me doing the kind of a temple where the full moon, you see on the other photograph, you see a full moon. So it's an astronomical instrument that had to be pointing to the full moon, first full moon after Shivaratri. So it's 5 tons. So I can't just pick it up and start putting it around on a floor that is over a basement. You can't point it there. We had to work with an astronomer to know where the full moon will be 3 months later. Then we had to install it, and then we all sat inside. I don't know if we were there, but I remember my friend Namita and Arun Saraf, who are my very close friends and responsible for this. They're coming and sitting with me in there, with our nervous, keeping our fingers crossed, and bingo, the moon happened at the time. So this is and behind that is behind the Sadashiv is the descent of the Ganga. There are 1,000 lingams on which the water falls. They're crystal lingams. So that descent of Ganga is another bas relief at Hayat. This was something I did with Anand Sarabhai, but I made these big lamps to reflect and this is Raval. And the folk artists all.
I remember how
where's Nalini Milani and where's Atul Dodia and they're all there. So this is again deconstructed. As you notice, Tanuja Rane is such a lovely, charming girl. So she bought all these prints, and at the end of it, they look somehow looked very typical and illustrative. So I picked up some because I love the kinetic of her cats. I love the way they move. So I changed.
I was there when we spread them out on the floor.
And I
suddenly
changed.
You went from middle of them and you picked up one and you put it somewhere else and you picked up the other one and you put it there.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So you know this. So unfortunately, other artworks are not here. But this shows you a little bit of the in situ where it happened. Then the Hayat was another thing. When Namita, my dear Namita Saraf, took me to see the new property in Chennai, it was a forbidding thing. It was huge, and I knew that Oberoi had left it, and I knew my friend Lalit Suri had taken it, and then he died. So there was a whole lot of karma which I wasn't quite happy with. But they took this, and so I said, it was empty. It was like the last huge atriums made in the 80s, and they don't make them like that any longer. So, and in that atrium, there was no walls to hang. There were these balconies. So lots of bees had made homes and beehives in the 10 years that it was closed.
Okay.
So there were just lots of bees and lots of hives. So I told Namita, why don't we create beehives? Because bees are a threatened species, and with the kind of terrible fertilizers we are taking in our, especially Tamil Nadu is very notorious for their fertilizers. Why don't we make a tribute to bees? And that started a whole journey on creating sculptures and art that relates to bees. This is my own, in which Malvika Sarukai danced in front of. So the whole idea of bees came in as the main theme. Lasage made that. That was Andrew Logan. That's Arpita's daughter, Anjum, Anjalila Menon. There are many here which made these beehives. And outside too. And inside, again, some sculptures of mine. Now, how do we promote this idea? Because it's much bigger than just an ecological brainwave. It had to be more. So I collected all the traditional scientists and the contemporary scientists, Pushpa Bhargav and Vandana Shiva and Sunita Narayan, Swaminathan ji, and then had musicians. Rahman came and opened it. Then there was T.N. Krishna. There was dancers, Valli and Sonal Mansingh and Malvika Sarukai. So for 3 days we had a symposium on the importance of bees. Now when a hospitality group starts to look at something that is very important, not just for culture, but for the region's environment, for its balance, then tourism has another very important role to play. So this was amazing, and this is really all credit to the Sarafs, because they've always let me stretch the envelope. You said, Ki, how do you? So here it's like we all mutually thinking that we have to do something different, otherwise it wouldn't happen.
Right. No, beautiful. And the very fact that I know it's great to have patrons, but it's also great to have conceptualizers like you.
But it's even greater to have patrons who are friends.
Yes, totally. Nothing like that.
So,
but conceptualizers and executioners are very important, Rajeev, and not everybody has the scale of what you're saying.
This country, Leena, this country, we have not even done the tip of the iceberg. We have not even scratched the surface. This is more, even if as I said earlier, if I have 9 lives, I could not return what it has taught me. So we are poorer if we do not recognize this. We are poorer if we go, दूर के ढोल सुहावने होते हैं, मगर सिर्फ दूर के पीछे भागेंगे तो हम जो हमारी अपनी असलियत है, हमारी जो पहचान जो है वो खो जाएगी, हमारी पहचान खो जाएगी. ये फिर दिल्ली में क्या, ये मैंने स्कल्पचर बनाया था on the double helix, on the cyclic development of the city. These are all parts of Delhi. I always write a poem in front of anything I do. This is my poem to set the Delhi project straight. This is Leela Kempensky. I again start with a poem. Raghurai did many films. There's an original Raghurai in every room of that Gurgaon hotel. I don't believe the present owner knows it, but he has about 200 signed portraits, signed pictures by Raghurai.
We should inform him. We should inform him if he doesn't know.
I agree. So this is all part of that. So this is part of the... So it only takes an artisan to change a hotel.
Yeah, beautiful thing to say that.
Louis Vuitton came to me and said, we want to celebrate something which will internationally, not just in India, in all the 1,000 windows, that could reflect a spirit of renewal. So I said Diwali, and we do Diwali. So I called it LV's Vinayak Lakshmi. And so I did these windows. They're all handmade, hand paper, hand painted, and they were in 1,000 windows in every single store of Louis Vuitton all over the world.
So are even the actual piece is actually hand painted.
Yes,
Suitcases is
on
actually
hand,
hand painted.
yes, hand painted, except for the ones in front. Those are originals.
Yes, yes. And these were done on, and they were like
Paper,
blocks
hand
which were
painted.
sent.
No, handmade paper. Then you can see some of these here, maybe. Hold on. See, everything was hand.
And then
These are the kind of things I wanted them to make for clasps, for cigar boxes. So now comes to the airport. The airport is a reel that you must go through. This is Sanjay Reddy and Pinky. I think both of them are, again, dear friends. I would say friends first and patrons afterwards. But I mean, them and their father, GVK, absolutely the real Renaissance. They've got the minds of, I mean, Sanjay has got a keen sense of what it means to be Indian and how he wanted to position a gateway to India that could only be done in India and could feel Indian. So it was, I think, brilliant that he, you know, if it was not for him, I would never have been able to do it. 5 years. And they came to me when they said that, you know, please do this. And I said, you know, I just found a wonderful guideline in the government saying that 2% of all building activity has to go towards arts and craft, 2% of the budget. So I told them, I showed them that. I said, will you give 2% of that to put into arts and crafts? Because I don't want to make cosmetic. I don't want to buy art for you and put it up here and there.
Yes.
Let's create the installation which will create the site-specific. And they said yes. Now that requires courage. That requires, because an airport is a very time-bound thing. It's got all kinds of technical things happening. You can't play around with it. So there was a lot of playing around. There was a lot of things that they allowed me to do. So I think, you know, Leena, it's not just about,
it's beautiful.
Not about the artists. By the way, this is actual photograph. This is a photograph of a 3-mile-long artwork. And this is only one of the artworks. There are 3 artworks. You can never see this like this ever. This will become a part of a book that I'm doing.
Which section?
This is what we call Thresholds of India. Actually, I should have been explaining. Each of them have a different name to it. But these are the senses, for example, the earth, the water that's coming now, the fire. Water has water coming. You can play music on it.
Right.
Then air.
So these are all amalgamation of different artists, and then it became one block.
No, I worked with 1,500 artists and craftspeople. I don't divide crafts and arts. It was anybody from the greats like Nilima Sheikh and Ghulam Sheikh, and working with craftspeople in Kashmir with me. There's no single artwork that's done without the intervention of craftspeople and with detailed work in each. So can you show some more? Like crossing the threshold. 3 artworks. These are the arrival corridors. I'm afraid I won't be able to go into the names of it. That's Manu Parekh. Manjural Kamath with 17 videos inside playing. Wildly, but it also moves.
I remember most of them.
They all move. And then the women all around the airport worked on... the airport is a separate lecture altogether. It takes about 3 hours, and it's not possible to.
I'm just saying it's a good glimpse to everybody to even know that you're the person behind it. So that because everybody's seen it, and everybody knows it's amazing, but nobody really knows that who's the person conceptualized it. I think this is a good introduction to that.
Again, patrons or friends, I find Preeti Bhabhi and Gautam Adani absolutely my jijman. They are my patrons, true patrons. I treasure and the trust I have from them, because they let me their house to do what I had to on Jainism. They taught me what Jainism meant, and how it could be reinterpreted in new ways. And I did huge installations in their house. This guy, I'm not going into the detail. Also, I think this is on Jivadaya, on the concept of interdependence of all life souls. I took from Jain philosophy things that are way, way, way before their time. There are issues that are hugely contemporary and scientific. And they were evoked by the great Jain sages. I worked with scholars in the beginning, but more than anything else, Preeti Bhabhi and her demeanor, Gautam Bhai with his extraordinary insight into how he wants to express his physical environment. These are everything to an artist. When they come up to say, here is my second skin, this is their second skin, this is their home. And then because I loved working with them, they were kind enough to ask me to come back and do their, and of course, look at the generosity. Each and every artist was awarded, was rewarded, was bought in. They called, for them it's a celebration of the skills of this country. And they all came at the opening itself. They gave them silver medals and certificates. And they also then asked me to do their corporate headquarters, which is what I'm doing right now. I never do more than one thing at a time. I can't. I physically can't involve myself too much. So this is so amazing. This is my sculpture. It's called Gundwana. There's a film to it too. It's my sculpture. Australian Aboriginal painters I bought from Australia and the Cont painters from India painting together. There's a film about this. You can see a whole film on this also. Geo is another project that I'm committed currently to. My foundation, the Asian Heritage Foundation, is now doing work in different sectors, in different villages, with women in 6 states. But what I want to reach out to all of you, a very, very important project. Let me finish this. The remaining years that are left are to set up a university. It's a center for excellence for creative and cultural enterprise. We are looking at 2 universities near Delhi that are interested in opening this center of excellence. We are working on that. The other is a learning app. There are many learning apps in this country, but for formal education, not for traditional skills. For that also has evolved greatly, and I'm doing that. This is my curtain call, actually. This is something my office, they've made a huge curtain with all the cuttings and all, and there's me in the middle there. But what I wanted to show you was something far more important, and which is what I want to share with you. This is my pitch to all of you. This is my request. Asian Heritage Foundation, since the pandemic, has been going out to in 6 states, working with the poorest of the poor, with the skills that we have been helping to set up as cooperatives. There are 4,000 skilled people in 6 states. There are many appeals. I'm afraid they have not been put into this for me to come to the most important part of my lecture.
We will ask you for the appeal directly.
Please,
so that
I'd like you to share this very quickly.
Yes.
This is in Bengal. It is about Patwas. The villagers there are in a terrible way. This is about, to my Hamsafars. They have now made the most incredible paintings based on the Karuna Pat.
It's really sad.
I'll send this to you. The artwork is exceptional. Look at the quality of this artwork of Anwar Chitrakar. His paintings sell for a lot of money, but look at the way he has put his heart into something that is of the time. No, he does better than anyone. He's the best known for the Kaligat revival, but there are many others.
কি করে আমরা এইসব ছেলে মেয়েদেরকে পড়াশোনাও তো ছেলে মেয়েদের বন্ধ হয়ে গেল, আবার এদিকে খাওয়াবো কি করে আমরা? আর তারপরে কিছু যদি আমরা সুযোগ সুবিধা পাই বাড়তিতে আমাদের ছেলে মেয়েদেরকে জনে একটু আপনাদের দয়ায় যদি কিছু মানে পাওয়া যায়, এতগুলো পরিবার 300 ফ্যামিলি আমাদের এখানে আছে, আমরা কি করে বাঁচব, এটা আমার আবেদন।
We are now on the 8th appeal. There's another one on Sadri language. There are 8 appeals. Please distribute them to your members and please help us reach these people. We are completely pro bono. There is no money, there is no overhead. We have no overheads on it. All money that you put in goes to the artists themselves. And I request you to please consider putting this in your membership so that they know what can be done.
I'm going to now invite Sunira back on the board here so that she can take it from here. But Rajeev, I mean, I haven't said enough. I think I'm really privileged that I was the one in discussion with you today. Thank you so much for the amazing conversation.
Thank you, Sunira ji.
Thank you. Rajeev ji, we are completely awestruck with the breadth and the depth of your work. The work is not just beautiful, but very, very meaningful. And it's left a lasting impression on all of us. Rajeev, we will be happy to send this video to all our members, like Leena just mentioned. I will also put it up on our Flo Kolkata official page, the Facebook page, and we'll put it up on the Instagram. So I will request your team to share it. Also sharing with you that Flo as a community is also looking at these artisans, and we are looking towards creating perhaps a portal or something to help them sell their, whatever they are doing to our Flo community and other people as well. So we will be in touch with you for all of those things. In the meantime, we'd like to felicitate you in the project that we've taken up right now for upskilling and facilitating employment opportunities for women below the poverty line. And as a small token of our gratitude, we'd like to felicitate you with a donation on your behalf. We know that when you empower a woman, you impact the lives of an entire family. Thank you, Rajeev ji. Thank you, Leena, for taking us through this amazing journey. I request Manjari to deliver the vote of thanks, please.
Thank you so much, Rajeev ji, for reminding us. Good evening, everyone. Design creates culture, culture shapes value, and value determines the future. Thank you, Rajeev ji, for building such a beautiful culture for the generations to come. You have been an integral part of the design world, and more so, you have woven the beautiful and vibrant culture of our country in all your designs. We are forever grateful for carrying forward the culture to our children. Leena, you were absolutely amazing. Thank you for being so beautiful and for interacting and bringing out so much. I think this session wasn't enough because I think this time the amount of knowledge that Rajeev ji has and the amount of work that he has to share, I don't think we did justice to him with this time. So we definitely very, very appreciate of your time, Rajeev ji and Leena. Our lead sponsors, DRIL, media partner Sanmar, gift partner Print Factory. Thank you for all your efforts. Coordinators Shraddha Saraf and Manisha Srivastav, they have worked effortlessly and endlessly on this event and putting it together. To our past presidents, past chairs, and to our members, always there for our support, for your enthusiasm. May we light the inner spark within. Thank you. Good evening. Jai Hind.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.